Before I get too far into this, there's a brief announcement I'd like to start with. Directly following the roundtable, we'll have Scott Finkeldine here from the Office of Mediated Education, who has some questions for anybody who wants to kind of help the evolution of K-State Online. They have some improvements to the interface that they just kind of wanted to test and see if, what the general consensus was about that. So if any of you have 10, 20 minutes right after this that you'd be willing to volunteer, please stay afterwards. Without further ado, my name is Ben Ward, and with me is...
I'm Joshua McCurdy.
And we're with the Office of Mediated Education, in cooperation with the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning and ITAC. We're bringing you the IDTRoundtable, or the Instructional Design and Technology Roundtable. And today we have a set of 4 panelists with us going over the do's and don'ts of online teaching. I'll quickly introduce them, and then I'll give them a chance to each kind of explain either what they currently are doing or have done in the past in terms of online instruction. Give them a chance to let them introduce themselves. We'll start down here at the end with Dept Canter, who is professor and department head of hotel restaurant management and dietetics. Followed by with Bill Shea, who's an assistant professor and instructor at computing and information science. Daniel Butcher, who is currently a DCE coordinator and formerly an instructor with the history department. And finally, Karin Westman, who's an assistant professor and technology coordinator with the Department of English. So I'll go all the way back to the end again, and we'll let Deb Canter kind of introduce herself and what she's currently doing.
Okay. Do I need to use the mic or anything, or is that?
Turn it up.
With any luck, you should be
Okay,
fine.
good. Gee, where do I start? I just wanted to say that over the 30 years of my career, I've been involved in some form of mediated instruction, and in fact, my dissertation 30 years ago dealt with computer-assisted instruction for teaching decision-making in a subject matter area. When I came to K-State 28 years ago, I started teaching on Telenet. And some of you may remember that system of, which I love. They could hear me, but they didn't have to look at me. Now we've moved into so many other things. It's just fascinating to look back over the years at how mediated instruction has journeyed and where we are right now. Our program in dietetics at K-State started in the mid-90s with a FIPSE grant to develop a distance education program in dietetics. Right now we have over 100 students in that program from virtually every state in the United States and several foreign countries. And since 2000, I believe we had our first graduate in 2001. Our program is a degree completion program whereby students take the first couple of years of courses. They can do it all online, and we help them find other schools that offer those basic courses if they need it. Many of our distance students are in locations where they can go to a community college or another institution to get their basic sorts of courses, and then they come to us for the last 2 years of professional courses in foods and nutrition and food service management. So that course, that program has been in existence now for several years. We continue to grow. We have never marketed the program outright. I would be terrified if we did, because we're pedaling as fast as we can right now with our faculty and our staffing to keep up with the number of students that we deal with. But we have a department that is very techy, and we really enjoy interacting with our distance students online, and I really believe across the board we've got a faculty who are really energized by distance teaching, and we've learned so much through our years of experience. We had a former department head who was with us when we were going through the initial process, and she used to say, when you're on the cutting edge, you bleed a lot. So we bled a lot through the years, and I think in things that we learned through our program has then been communicated to other folks on campus who have started other online ventures. Right now, I personally teach a 1-credit introductory course online that's year-round There's a second undergraduate course that I developed, a 3-credit senior course that has now been taken over by an instructor, but that is a course I developed. And I've also developed 2 graduate courses online, one of which I teach every summer and another one sort of on an alternating year basis. So I've kind of been through the process a lot and have learned a lot of things, and I feel like I'm a better classroom instructor for what I've learned by being a distance instructor.
My name's Bill Shea. I'm in the computer science department. And I'd like to start out by saying we've got about a half a dozen of our faculty who currently use some form of online instruction. In most cases, that includes using the Tegrity system, for those of you who are familiar with Tegrity, in some aspect of their classes. I currently handle 3 different groups of classes. I'm responsible for the CIS 101 through 104, which is the information technology, spreadsheets, databases, and word processing, which are really service courses for the university. We run about 800 plus students in 4-week cycles through those courses. And those are all online. We have a second category of classes which I'm responsible for, which are the CIS 105 and 111. Again, those are primarily service classes. They're computer programming classes. 105 is an introduction to computer programming, which is a 1-credit hour class. 111 is a 3-credit hour class. It's really designed for non-computer science majors, just to kind of give them a basic course in computer programming. And then the third one is our CIS 200 course, which is the entry-level course into computer science. And we're doing that one now. That course is actually being offered throughout the entire state of Kansas to high schools and community colleges. They're able to take that course wherever they're at in the state of Kansas. In some cases, it's just for high school credit. In other cases, they may actually enroll in K-State and take it at the high school or at the community college. We have a variety of ways that we do that. The 101 through 104 courses have kind of a path that they follow, where a student takes a practice quiz when they first come into the class, and then based on the result of that, a training module, a custom training module is prepared. They go through the training, and then they take a quiz. They go through 2 of those, and then they have a final exam. Now, the 2 quizzes they handle strictly on their own, online, whenever, wherever they want, as long as they meet the deadlines. And then the final exam is actually given in lab at a specified time and place. The 105 and 111 classes, all of the lectures are Tegrity lectures, and they're online. All of the homework, all of the assignments are all online. But in those 2 classes, we expect them to come into the lab once a week, and they meet with a lab instructor who goes over any problems that they're having, answers questions, that kind of thing. The 200 outreach course, which is out in the high schools and the community colleges, we operate a little bit differently. I've prepared all of the lectures. Those are all online. And again, all the materials, just like the 105 and 111. The difference is that lab instructor, which we use for 105 and 111, is really a local instructor out in the high school or the community college. So they're basically teaching our class, and that local high school computer teacher, in effect, becomes a TA for me to handle the questions and things like that might come up. So that's how we're basically operating those classes. Daniel?
I'm Daniel Butcher. I'm the program coordinator at the Division of Continuing Education for the Bachelor's Degree Completion Program in the College of Business Administration. And yes, usually I'm really tired when I'm done saying all that. the basics of what I do is I serve 600 bachelor's degree completion students in the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Business Administration, and the College of Ag, and finishing their degrees online from coast to coast, and even some military students deployed overseas. So basically in my job, I wind up supporting and interacting with both faculty and students. Out of my office, we have a full-time arts and sciences advisor who does nothing but advise distance arts and sciences students. We also have a GA who assists students in getting admitted to Kansas State University from a distance. And then we have various amounts of interaction depending on what degree program they are with the students. And then I also support all the instructors in getting their courses developed, set up, and administered every semester. I also at one time was a GTA who taught history courses online, but I decided I didn't want to be a PhD student forever, so something had to give. So I'm not currently doing that, but I did find that through my interactions with students and with faculty that the things that I'd hear about other courses and things that were going on did overall make me a better distance instructor while I was teaching.
My name is Karin Westman. I'm from the English department, and I'm an assistant professor in the department, but I'm also the technology coordinator for the department. As a teacher, I've been involved in mediated education with technology for at least 10 years, almost 12 years as a graduate student, and then after I'd gotten my degree. But I've never taught a course online, so I sort of represent another way of thinking about online teaching, I think, from the rest of the folks on the roundtable today. Instead, I have used technology extensively in the classroom, in the physical classroom, and also made great use of message boards and listservs as ways to extend conversations from the classroom into another alternate space. And so I'm happy to talk more about my work with that particular project. I've also become increasingly interested, since I've also taught writing and also helped teach our GTAs how to teach XPOS 1 and XPOS 2 to our students here. I've become increasingly interested in how to present materials in an online environment to assist with writing instruction, particularly use of color blocking of text, various kind of visual cues that we can use to help our students experience the material in a different way. So I'm interested in kind of meeting multiple student needs in terms of learning environment and learning experiences.
And with that said, why don't we go ahead and start with any general questions that people might have with the panel, and if not, I have a few I can start with. Anybody have a question they'd like to ask?
Go ahead and start. Has anybody had any experience with developing dynamic team projects over online distance?
Has anybody had any experience?
I personally, in my class, have not, but I know some of our faculty do that they team up students, distant students, to work on projects together, and it has worked very successfully. But I personally have not used that in my own course. But I wanted to tell you a brief story about that. We've got 2 international students who have come to K-State this semester to actually finish their program on campus, one from Saudi Arabia and one from Singapore. And they had actually worked on a project together in a class. And it was really fun when they finally met each other face to face this semester. I was going, where's the collegian? This is a great story. But, you know, it has worked very successfully in some of our courses.
I teach fundamentals of financial planning with the Great Plains Interactive Distance Education Alliance. And because I have some students that have extensive experience in the industry and some that are just beginning, at the beginning of the semester I have them do a resume, and then I do a synopsis of their experience, and then I divide them into teams and give them an assignment to develop together, and they have to develop the lesson plan, the assignment, and the quiz, and then I pull the actual final quiz from what they submit. But it gives the less experienced an opportunity to interact with the more experienced around a topic where the more experienced sometimes know more than I do. So it's a really good chance for interaction that you can get in an online environment that you can't necessarily get in a traditional classroom environment.
Some of the K-State online features are really great because students can arrange a chat room between their team at a certain time and, you know, upload files so each other can see pieces of what they're working on. So I think the K-State online system is really great. I mean, I'm sure I still don't even know what all it can do.
We actually, we have a new grouping tool that's just been in play only
See, there you
since
go.
August, and it's terribly powerful. So if you have an opportunity, we also did a last session a month ago about online groups and so forth. And at the end, we'll show you a website link where you can actually see the video for that and get the handouts from that session. But anytime you have an opportunity to use groups, I always strongly recommend it. It increases the interest and the investment students have in the course. And way back in the back.
Some of you look familiar. How have you handled the integrity piece of the online courses?
In computer science, what we do again with our high school community colleges, we have a local instructor, and that local instructor is there to be able to take care of those kinds of issues. With our CIS 101 through 104 courses, the two quizzes that are online, we leave integrity up to the individual student. And we recognize that any student could sit down with any other student and that student could take their quiz for them, but ultimately they have to come into the lab to do their final. So if they're going to cheat on the quiz, that's fine, but that's only worth 30% of their grade. 70% is the final exam. So if they've cheated on the quizzes, it's just going to hurt them on the final exam. So we kind of cover it that way. In other courses like our 105 and 111, our 105 course, it's an introductory course and it's a programming course. Most of the students we find in that class really want to learn and they're not there just to get a grade. And so they pretty much do the work that they're supposed to do on their own without a problem. Occasionally we do run into problems with that, but usually I've got a GTA in each of those classes that handles the labs, and they're able to pick up on that as they're grading homework assignments. And you know, you get a student that has turned in their first 3 assignments and basically gotten a D on them, and all of a sudden they turn in an A assignment. You have to start wondering and look at that.
In your 101 through 104 classes, have you thought about using project-based rather than implementing step-by-step integrity type?
We use Course Technology, which is a commercial product, just because we're running, like I said, 800 plus students every 4 weeks through there, and it's all we can do just to manage, keep up with the administrative aspect of it without having to deal with other issues. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to offer the course.
To go back to the integrity question, actually, just to add something more, if you happen to be teaching an assignment or a whole class that's based around process or kind of staging an assignment, then at least you're able to track the student's development over the course of a whole assignment, and that provides a possibility to track that development and to make sure that you have those students who are contributing their own ideas and developing those same ideas over the course of a whole project, which is a strategy we use in our regular XPOS curriculum in order to make sure that we don't have students who are jeopardizing that integrity even in a regular classroom environment.
Does anyone have any experience with where they taught a course in the classroom and taught the same course via the web and compared evaluations?
I do that.
Evaluations in what? Say, student evaluations of teaching or
something like that? Student evaluations? See if the
I've done that in both our 105 and 111 classes, because like I say, we do the lectures are actually online in those classes, but the students come into the lab, versus our DCE course in which the lectures are online, but the students don't go to a lab, they don't attend a lab, so they're kind of at a disadvantage there. What we've done is we run things like Microsoft Net Meeting and allow them to interact that way with a lab instructor, and then have compared the two. and for the most part find that they compare very favorably. Most of the students that have done that feel like they've been able to achieve their goals just the same as the students that are actually coming into the classroom.
I have a question. When people come to us and say, how do you get started? Will you all share, what's step 1, 2, 3? How do you get started?
What, developing a course?
Yes.
I find K-State Online to be very, very user-friendly, and there are certainly enough people to help you out on campus with the ITAC assistance people and all of that. I would also suggest that maybe you partner up with someone who's developed a course before and have them sort of help you walk through it the first time. I think once you become familiar with K-State Online, uploading a course is not that difficult at all. It's just how well organized are you. I'm the most unorganized person on the planet. I think I'll be the first one to admit that. And you have to be organized. You've got to have your ducks in a row before you get ready to upload stuff. But if you've got things lined out and your approach to the course, actually the technology of putting it up there is not a difficult thing to do. Somebody, the rest of you guys chime in here.
For me, I've always taken the approach, I'm going to teach it in the classroom at least once. So I have some idea what I'm doing with the class. And then once I have taught it in the classroom, I go back and actually prepare, because I tend to use all integrity for my lectures online. So I go back once I've taught it in the classroom and actually prepare PowerPoint slides for what I taught. And then I can take those PowerPoint slides when I do my integrity lectures and use those to actually prepare the online lectures with. And then, as Deb mentioned, once you've got that done, it's a simple process of going through the uploading to get the course online.
I think whether you're going integrity, where you are actually being videoed and it streams right to the internet, is a great way to go. It's kind of a talking head, which some people go, they get old after a while, but the student is looking at you talking while they're looking at your PowerPoint slides. That technology is something you kind of have to learn how to do, and I have not. I'm experiencing that the first time for a summer course I'm working on. For a lot of my other courses, I have tend to just do it in a modular sort of format, that here's module 1, here's your objectives, here's your readings, here's your assignments, here's chat room questions, here's references. I mean, everything is just uploaded and it's there. Some people like to just reveal the whole course at the beginning of the semester. Some people say every week I'm going to upload a new module for you to do. I think there's different ways to go about approaching how you structure an online course.
And I think a good technique is when you're starting, stay within your comfort zone. Keep it simple. I work with several faculty that would define themselves as being low tech. And by starting them in their comfort zone, they can eventually begin to put in the whistles and the bells later on as they get to be more and more comfortable with the technology.
Yeah, I think that's true. If you have the luxury of having an opportunity to integrate slowly the different types of technology, as opposed to a department chair saying, guess what, you're teaching an online class this semester, go at it. Then I think if you have that luxury of being able to start to incorporate technology into your regular classes and start to make it more of a hybrid class, then you have some background and some preparation and maybe some modules and materials available to then transition into a full online course. But what surprised me is what K-State Online has allowed for English faculty, who you might presume may not be as immediately tech savvy or willing to enter into this sphere. But actually, a number of our faculty are interested in making materials available online and making use of that technology, which seems to be one more step towards taking the kind of full online course experience.
Yes, Chuck.
Do you find that online students and maybe perhaps new online students come to the online class with expectations or maybe concerns that are different than, say, in a face-to-face situation? And if you do, could you share a few of those?
Well, a lot of the students that we work with have most of their angst in their first semester. just because they haven't ever had a chance to experience the rhythm of what's going to occur during an online semester. And a lot of them have been out of school for a while, so they may not feel exactly comfortable themselves with the technology that they're using on the other end, or something as simple as their writing skills. They may not have written a paper in the last 10, 15 years as a non-traditional student who took their XBOS 1 and 2 in the early 90s. Usually during that first semester, they're able to work out most of those kinks and those fears, so that in the the next semesters, they are a lot more comfortable. I've even seen them at times help out other students. Oh, I had that problem last semester. This is what you need to do. And just kind of get all those kinks worked out. What we usually try to do on the advising side is in first semesters for online students, we tend to put them in courses that we know will kind of give them an overview of the majority of deliveries they're going to see throughout their academic career, and isn't going to be so robust in the beginning that they're going to be intimidated and not feel like they can finish.
We've increasingly gone to courses that are CD-ROM based, so that we actually, I mean, DCE has been great in helping us actually capture lectures in the ongoing classroom and burn those to a CD-ROM and send those to the students, because sometimes the technology on the other end, even though we tell them here are the minimums, you know, if they're somewhere where they don't have good internet access and download times are really, you know, make you want to pull your hair out, the CD-ROM way to go is really great, because they can pop that in, watch the lecture, and then your web page is kind of a support page for the syllabus and whatever else you want to do, but the actual lecture sort of material can be on a CD-ROM. And I think often it's the technology piece that if the first few encounters are bad, then everybody gets all tense. But, you know, I think our tech support people are really great in hand-holding and helping them work through the problems.
I think in the 101 through 104 classes, we have proven false the myth that says young people today are computer savvy. Don't believe that. They are not. We get kids, you know, like I say, we run 800 plus students so come into 101. These are primarily freshmen, sophomore. They're straight out of high school. They've had all of this computer experience. They are so knowledgeable. What they are knowledgeable of is how to check their email and how to surf the web. That's it, okay? And so they come into an online class like this, and in spite of, I mean, we detailed instruction. Click here, open up this URL, type this in this place. It doesn't happen. And so we end up with 50 or 100 that have problems. Now, what happens is if they take 101 through 103 or 104, by the time they get to 103 and 104, they're starting to catch on to this. But you'd be amazed. Even though from 102 to 103, the only thing that changes is the topic, they'll mess up the same things, you know, when they go from one to the other. And so there is this angst. They have this expectation because they have been told how computer savvy they are. Then they come in, they take a course like this, they don't understand how it works, they can't make it work, primarily because they don't read the syllabus, they don't read the instructions. Then they have problems, and whose fault is that? The instructors or the lousy software? You know, it's never the student's fault. And so we struggle with that. You know, I've got TAs, several TAs that work for me in the 101 through 104 classes, and we struggle with that every single class session in dealing with those issues. But yeah, that is a big problem that we deal with.
When you offer an online course, many of these, perhaps some that you all teach, students can go at their own pace, complete the course in 3/4 of the semester. How do you avoid getting trapped into students that begin to lag behind in a self-paced course, and then you've got that temptation of issuing more incompletes at the end of the semester than you should, and then pretty soon you have one semester running into another? Or are you all very well-disciplined instructors and you keep consistent on your deadlines?
I do what Deb said when she was talking about modules versus putting your whole course up. All of my courses I do in modular fashion. So I say, you know, here's week 1. You've got from now until this date, you have to turn this assignment in. Here's week 2. You can start on that now, and you have until this date to get this assignment in. And that's the only way I can manage my courses.
And a follow-up question pops into my mind is that how do you handle it? I would think a typical student complaint is, I tried to get that assignment in, and for the last 3 days, my computer has been having problems, or not my computer, but the network that I pay into has been down. And
with the 101 through 104 courses, that is a very, very common complaint. But we have, our assignments are up a week at a time. We have about, out of 850 students, I'll end up with 10 or 15 that are true distance students. The rest of them are all on campus. And I simply say to them, I don't care whether you can use your computer or not. The software is up in the public labs. If your computer goes down, you go to the public lab. You've got a week to complete this. If it's not done by this time, on this date, you've missed it, it goes away.
You've got to be hard-nosed about it.
Pardon?
How about the true distance students?
On those, it really depends. What I have found is that about 95% of them are very well disciplined. They get their work done. Occasionally, like I had one guy that is a business executive, and he sent me an email about an hour before the quiz was due and said, Bill, look, I'm at a meeting in New York. I meant to bring my CD with me so that I could go ahead and take the quiz before I went back. He was in Georgia, and he said, I forgot my desk. So I said, okay, what time do you get back? He emailed me back, said he was going to be back at 7 o'clock. I said, you've got until midnight. That's it, cutting you off. And yeah, but you really do have to be disciplined, because otherwise they just will carry on and everybody has
for all
an
it's
excuse.
worth, but I swear I had a student manning a Patriot missile battery in Kuwait who, honest to goodness, and she got assignments in that on-campus students are going, you know.
Yeah.
And one thing I always ask myself is, if I'm in a face-to-face course and somebody came into me and asked for an extension, what would my response be?
Does it have a time frame, or do you put the module on and leave, and then put the second module on and leave them on the entire semester, or do you turn them off after a week?
On mine, I put them on and leave them on, but every module has an assignment with a due date.
Me too.
But then they just stay up there. And that's one of the things that students comment about, because especially if you do like a midterm and a final, they can go back then and look at previous lectures and notes and that kind of thing as they review for the exam, and that's a real benefit.
The only thing I usually will clean up sort of on a weekly basis is the message board, and sort of archive this week's discussion, and they can go access that later. But to keep the whole thing up there, it really gets too cumbersome after a while.
Just as a thought, what I've done in my modules, there's two parts to it. There's the lecture and the assignment. The lecture stays, and the assignment disappears. Right. It's really, if you time them out that way.
In going from a classroom environment to online, many of us who love to be in the classroom, enjoy the face-to-face meeting with students, are concerned that we're going to lose the essence of that classroom, that exchange of ideas, that spontaneity is gone, that question that's asked out of the blue that really stimulates conversation. In order to do the best job of bringing that to an online format, is there a particular technology package or device that you have found that helps bring that into the online environment, some of that classroom exchange? Comments. Could you make comments? Students are going to get bored looking at your headshot on the taped lectures and things like that. So, is there anything you've run across at this point that you would say, boy, whatever I do, I'm going to incorporate that part of my online course because it does the best job as of today's technology in capturing some of that exchange that we lose.
I personally am a huge fan of the message board. That's pretty much where I try to capture that learning event. I've taught one course both out at Fort Riley and online, and I'll be honest, I'd put the questions out into the air at my face-to-face course, and they pretty much expect me to answer the question. But it's clear in the message board that I'm expecting them to answer it. They've got time to formulate and come up with a more comprehensive and more detailed and even an answer that they have more ownership on. And then they're even able to freely feel like they can interact with each other on that question, so I don't have to be the one to come in and comment on what they said.
In my classes, I try to get around that issue by, as I teach the class in the classroom, making sure I keep track of questions that get asked. And even after I have prepared a lecture and put it online, and I'm going into the labs and I find that, you know, this particular lecture, students came into the lab and I've got 50% of them are asking this particular question, I'll go back and redo that lecture. And the technique I use then is, as I'm lecturing, I'll just make a comment. Now, you're probably sitting there watching this, thinking to yourself, and here's the question. Now, how do we deal with that? And just make it as if it were a question actually coming into me. And students seem to respond well to that. Something else I need to say now is, when I do integrity lectures, and again, these are videotape lectures, streaming video, I do these offline. And one of the techniques I've learned, if you're going to do offline lectures, don't do a 50-minute lecture. You cannot expect your students to sit there and watch 50 minutes of you know, like this, as talking head. What do they get on TV? 10 minutes? 15 minutes at the most? So I take all of my lectures and break them down into little 10, 15, hopefully a maximum of 20 minutes. And then
put in an ad, right?
Yeah, and then put in a little commercial.
Little commercial message.
So what the student does then is they can look at this 10 minutes, and if they want to take a break then and go get a beer and pizza and come back and look at the next 10 minutes and whatever, it's easier for them to do that. The other advantage to me is it allows me to do a better job of preparation because I've only got 10 minutes I've got to focus on here. And with my mind, I tend to forget a lot, so I want to have lots of notes here that as I go through my lectures. And then when I need to update a lecture, if I only have 10 minutes to update, it's a whole lot easier than trying to update a whole 50-minute lecture. So I really focus on keeping my lectures down to very short, very focused lectures. And the other thing that I do with them then, because they're all programming, I can pull. I'm doing a lecture on Java data types, and I need that in my 105 class. I also need it in my 111, and I need it in my 200 class. I can tape the one lecture and just copy it over to all three classes. If I need to update it, I just update one and just copy it to all three classes instead of having to update all three. So it works out well that way.
You mentioned using integrity there and how you chunk that up, and you were talking about live interaction stuff. With the new integrity campus agreement that we have at K-State, it includes the integrity live component. And as someone, maybe Scott or somebody could speak more to that than I understand, but the way I've seen it, it works, you can have a group of 15, 20, 30 students that are all connected in real time, and you can at the same time you can be lecturing, and integrity behaves the same way it normally does, capturing your audio, your video annotations. The student can raise their hand, click a little button that says they want to raise their hand, and they get the floor, and then they can use voice over IP. The rest of the students can actually hear them ask a question at the time, and then you hand the baton back to the instructor, and you can facilitate discussion that way real time. And that would probably be high up in the high interactive and also real time categories.
That's something we hope to play with in the fall.
Wow.
Yeah, there is going to be a demo set up in the union here.
April 26th, from about 9 to 3 or 4.
Yeah, almost all day. You can come and go and see how it works and ask questions. It'll be here in the union, open to everybody.
And you're bringing that over to slides so we can see it.
We are all over that.
And I'll just throw out, because of the technology concerns, that it doesn't really require any more extra technology on the students' end than just watching a non-live integrity lecture. It's still the same audio and video and PowerPoint stream that they would have gotten from the non-live one. And they have if they don't have a microphone on their computer so that they can do the voice over IP part that Rob talked about, which only requires about 8 to 10 more K of bandwidth, so not a very large extra amount of bandwidth. They also have a text-based chat room, so if they don't have a mic or they're not able to get that part working, they can still raise their hand and type the question, and it's still seen by everybody. So there's an alternative to that as well.
Is anybody, or would any of you speak to the differences or similarities, either one, of the techniques and process that you use in the classroom versus your online material? Same, different, whatever?
Well, again, I basically do, my online is basically my, my in-classroom course. The only difference is when I'm doing it online, I use PowerPoint, and in the classroom, I don't. I do everything basically off the chalkboard, just because it's more fun to do, more interesting to do that, you know, while students, while you're lecturing, and you can draw little pictures and that. I can do that same thing online with PowerPoint, but it's a little more difficult to do, and so I find it easier if I'm doing it online, just to make sure I've got everything done in PowerPoint ahead of time, as opposed to trying to draw pictures and stuff. But it's the same class.
What I find, the majority of faculty that I work with tend to cover the same content, but they tend to make it a little bit more rigorous to compensate for the lack of seat time.
I'm enjoying this exchange of ideas. Enrollment size. Same size as the class that is in the classroom, smaller, bigger, too hard to nail down? Well, we're talking numbers here.
Well, again, in the classroom for our 101 through 104, we're looking at 800 plus students. In my 105 class, we'll run about 80 students, and of those, I'll get maybe 10 will be true distance students. The 111 class will run about 40, and of those, about 5 of them will be distance students. In the 200 outreach, it is a pure outreach course then, in the sense that we don't do anything from here. And we're running about 250 high school students right now.
How many faculty or GTAs are keeping track of those 800?
And I've got 3 GTAs that work with me on that. I've got 1 GTA that handles 105, 1 that handles 111, and then of course in every high school they have to have a local instructor to work with however many high school students they have.
In most of our classes, distance classes, we may have, I would say, 20 to 30 distance students for a typical 3-credit class, where we may have that number or twice that number on campus. I do think you have to limit the number of distance students. It's more intensive, a lot more email work with them, so you've really got to pay attention to that. Also, if you're running chat rooms and stuff, I don't think you can do more than about 8 students in a chat room, or it's crazy. So you have to look at somewhat limiting the size of that. Now, in my little 1-credit course, I may have 35 or so. It just really varies from the course and how it's approached as to how many you can handle.
And it depends on what type of grading you're doing or what your assessment technique is.
Yeah.
Because those faculty and instructors inside English who have experimented with online grading while teaching a kind of regular classroom in the regular classroom environment, remarked upon how much longer it took to grade essays electronically, even using Microsoft Word annotation, or trying to do holistic grading. So the ramp up time was greater too, just feeling more comfortable with the technology and being able to work through even just using Word and annotations in Word. So there's an issue there too in terms of what form of assessment you'd be using for this instruction. And that's one of our hesitancies in trying to figure out how to create writing classes online, is sort of how many could we limit it to, how many should we limit it to, how do we do the same kind of assessment and do it effectively.
We really want all of our PhD students in our department to have experience with online teaching before they leave us. And so, you know, many of our online classes are handled by our doctoral students.
I think this intensity issue is important too, because like in the case of our 101 through 104, between my 3 GTAs and myself, we keep track of the statistics on this, we're averaging about 200 emails a day from these students in 101 and 102, and it drops down to about 100 a day in 103. By the time we get to 104, we're down to maybe 50 a day. But yeah, during the 101 and 102, but we go through a lot. I just about live at the computer just handling email for those classes.
And what I've found is I'll have certain periods in the semester that'll be a lot more intense for me than others. So when I'm trying to teach more than one online course at the same time, I tend to try to make those periods not overlap. Make sure the midterms aren't coming in on the same day, or a major assignment in 2 different courses are all coming to me on the same day, or otherwise I'd never be able to get to everything.
I wanted to find out how much from Bill, how much of that is duplicate, how much of that is the same question asked by 30 or 40 students, or are they all pretty unique?
Most of them, well, a lot of them may be the same problem that they're having. You know, a particular question in the quiz, and they said, you know, I clicked on this and it didn't work the way I thought it was supposed to, and that may go out to 2 or 3 different TAs because they're in different sections. And that I couldn't give you a figure on.
I guess the reason I asked is because I wonder if any of you have a do strategy for, I'm getting a lot of the same question, how do I get that information out to my students?
What we do, again, when the TAs come back to me and say, hey, look, I've had this question asked 4 times, then what I do is I go out to the class email, and I send an email out to everybody that says, when you get to this question, if you have this problem, watch this. Make sure that you have done this to kind of help them work through that problem.
I think email the roster, or sometimes posting a message of the day, you know, if they go to that and read it.
Yep.
I think it would depend on what kind of class you're teaching, but I have seen where you assign a group to answer emails for 1 week. So actually they're taking care of a lot of that stuff. And you know, when you teach, you actually learn more. So those groups are learning more that week.
That's a great idea. So you're having the students answer their own questions in peer fashion.
Right.
Yes, question.
I'm going to direct this question to Karin, but anybody can answer. I'd like to know what you found in your experience of using online teaching in a classroom on-campus setting. What would you say are the 2 or 3 most useful benefits to student learning from doing that?
Increased participation. The comments that were made earlier about how the message board in particular provides a space for students to develop their own voice or develop a contribution fully to the conversation. That's one of the greatest benefits, I think, is that increased participation and commitment and buy-in then to the classroom discussion. As I tell my students, I make sure we have an electronic discussion area because I know that everybody's not on from 9:30 to 10:20 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so it becomes important to have them have a place to contribute their ideas when they can or when they feel they're able to or can develop an interesting idea or a question. So I think that's the first one I would list. The other benefit I see is kind of multiple learning styles. To be able to, for some students who are oral learners, who are able to listen to lecture and gather their information that way, the classroom environment can be beneficial. But for those students who are read-write students, who need to be able to recursively review information, posting your lecture notes on an online environment for them to access at a later point in time becomes a way for those students to have access to the material within a learning environment that they feel more comfortable with. And I could say more about using technology inside the classroom too, but those are the two areas I could see a mediated environment, a distance component being useful in an regular environment.
Getting close to the end here, a couple more questions.
A couple questions just kind of come to mind. And I'm in landscape architecture, so a lot of what we do is visual oriented, and even exchange of drawings, and we're more graphic based. And I think I just wonder how distance learning can be accommodated for that type of environment. I know you've got the visual, video streaming and things like that, but we exchange ideas on plans, and to be able to have the student scan their plan or photograph their plan and be able to transfer that information quickly to the instructor and the rest of the class is important. I think a lot of what's you guys have been dealing with is more text-based. So I just wonder where the technology is with that.
Some answers?
We use one of our pilots courses that teaches meteorology. It's totally visual on weather and conditions and what to interpretation. A couple of lectures I can't even get on a CD because of the huge files.
Right.
But it's all graphic based, and it works wonderful. Kids think it's one of the best things we got going.
Well, they use integrity to...
some of it is integrity, some of it is they take national aeronautical charts and put up on in there, or download from NOAA weather data charts, current weather.
So they use other resources for
clip current weather off of NOAA, which is a government site, and you can put current weather and say, here's the weather today, what would you do? So they get a lot of interactivity that you wouldn't be able to in the classroom without dragging something else in and be able to get an interactivity. You can get that response from, here's the current weather, what do you predict it to be here, would you fly this, would you do this, would you do this path? And it's amazing what they, and then, in 2 hours you can sit and say, was I right or was I wrong? Yeah. Which is kind of nice, is to sit around and you get a real positive interaction going among the students in your chat room, just with one picture image, and let them watch the weather and see what it's going to do.
And if the graphic is coming from the student to the instructor, the student can use the file Dropbox, and then the instructor can go ahead and publish it and share it with the entire class, or the student, if they're in a group, can use the grouping tool to share it with everybody that's in their group, or they could even post an attachment on the message board, and the instructor wouldn't have to post the attachment, the graphic.
You can zip your image together and upload it, then pack it away.
I know a lot of what our students are working on CAD, so if they have AutoCAD or something like that, but to be able to have that instantly transferred to a file that everybody else could read without having to have AutoCAD, I don't know.
But if you create out of AutoCAD, all you have to do is just create a PDF file from it, create a graphic, a PDF file, post a PDF file, and everybody has access to that through AccuReader.
Okay. Another, I want to dominate this, but another question I have is on the message board. I haven't used it. I use KSOL a lot for file serving and grade, for the gradebook part of it, but I haven't really got into the chat room or the message board. I tend to take care of the students' questions just primarily through email. And they can walk down the hall and find me. I mean, our students are pretty much residents of the building. So I just wondered, the advantages of maybe the message board instead of having just regular email. Is that something that, how do they know when a message has been posted, or there's an answer to their message or something like that?
Generally, a student's going to need to check the message board to see if there's a new posting there.
Right.
They will be marked as being something new until they've read it. So what we generally tell our distance students is that they should be checking their message boards 3 to 4 times a week, just in case there's something new there that they need to respond to.
It kind of depends on how you're going to use the message board. If it will be a location for students to pose questions they need answered about a homework assignment, or is it going to be a space instead to develop further conversations that may have happened in another place or time. So I think that that impacts our answer to your question too.
And one big reason why we push for message boards to be used by most of the instructors that I work with is that we were finding that email messages were getting dropped by outside servers. So that was one way to guarantee that it was always there, and if they said my server dropped it.
Right. Whenever you join the conversation, it's there, which
Right.
I do like, as opposed to listservs, whereby somebody has to be subscribed, and then they only have to archive, they have to go back and find the archives
Right.
if they exist, rather
There,
than
it's,
having
it's
everything.
there. You can.
Try it out. I'd also like to throw out that we're planning the
Feature for a future release that will allow you to percolate up all kinds of new information right to the front page of a course, sort of like an announcements thing that will say, you have 3 unread messages on the message board. There are 2 new assignments available that are due this week, and there's 1 file been uploaded by the instructor. Some sort of percolate up all kinds of new information to a single access point where the students could just check that one spot and get the big picture at once. We don't have that yet, but that's one that we're developing.
Those guys are good.
Without further keeping you all captive past our time, I would like to thank Dept, Canter, Shea, Daniel Butcher, and Karin Westman for their time.
We could really use any input on the interface designed for the next version of K-State Online. Anybody who'd be willing to stay for a few minutes and talk to us about that, we'd really appreciate it.
Just literally a few moments.
And also I'd like to point out that next Wednesday at the same time in room 202 there will be a coffee chat session for anybody who would like to get together and just share ideas and experiences. That'll be hosted by Chelsea McCurdy and I, and I'm trying to bribe some of our panelists to come in, and Dr. Clegg usually attends also. You're more than welcome to come and bat around some thoughts and comments. Thank you for attending. Thank you for sharing your experience with us.